Hi there, I'm Pauline Norstrom from Anacanter Consulting, and today I'm going to talk about AI in security. So first, I will talk a little bit about myself. I'm going to be providing an overview of AI in security specifically. I'm going to talk about identifying and containing harms, also ethical and legal considerations, and a few tips in terms of where to look for further guidance. So a little bit about myself. I'm the founder of Anacanter Consulting and Anacanter AI, innovation advisory companies focused on high-risk AI. I'm also a board advisor on AI ethics to BSIA, IOD and Digital Catapult. I'm a former chair of the BSIA and now an elected honorary member. Over the last 20 years, I've been involved in video, analytics and digital technology in security applied across sectors such as transportation, retail, smart buildings, cities and so on. I'm a UK and International Statutory Board Director and also a Fellow of the Institute of Directors. To enhance my technology background, I completed the University of Oxford AI programme just over 3 years ago. I also work with UK and international standards bodies, developing AI guidance and standards, including BSI and the IOD, where the new AI governance framework for directors is based on Anacanter's ethical framework. Facial recognition technology is a specific area of interest. It's a high-risk AI due to its nature, whereby it could be argued that the beneficial or harmful use is separated only by ethical principles. So on to a very brief, non-technical overview of AI. So the security industry is a prolific user of AI-based technologies, which have evolved to become valuable in detecting crime and preventing loss. The global AI market is valued at around $100 billion as of 2022. And security-related AIs are regularly in the top 5 most invested AIs. And with this evolution comes an increase in the range of use cases, which raise new questions regarding the ethics and legality of AI-based deployments, and particular facial recognition software. If we first set the backdrop, artificial intelligence has been in existence in some form or other for over 70 years. But definitions vary depending on who you ask. There's now a British standard, which I'll abbreviate to 22989, for artificial intelligence concepts and terminology. And the EU appear to be adopting a similar description based on OECD guidelines. And this is what we think it will end up looking like. So AI is a machine-based system that's designed to operate with varying levels of autonomy, and that can, for explicit or implicit objectives, generate outputs such as predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing physical or virtual environments. So how do you measure the intelligence of AI? This started with the Turing test. Pictured here is Alan Turing, the British mathematician, who is widely acknowledged as one of the inventors of the computer in the 1930s. He published his scientific paper in 1950, which considered whether machines could think. He introduced the idea of the Turing test, which aimed to determine whether a machine had human-like intelligence. If it were impossible to distinguish between a machine's answers to questions posed and a human's, the test could be considered to have been passed, and the machine possessed human intelligence. So AI is evolving fast, and we see the rapid rise of the chatbot and the emergence of large language models, which learned from the totally unregulated internet, also generative AI, which can create new content. Chatbot technology, in particular ChatGPT, created by OpenAI, but also Meta's Llama and Google's Bard, surpassed the Turing test some time ago. They're so good, they appear to provide human-like responses. And the quote here, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that, is from the 1968 movie 2001 Space Odyssey, which imagined HAL, pictured here, a chatbot, which stopped taking instructions from the crew of a spaceship and decided to complete its mission at any cost, including taking the lives of the crew. Now, developers are having to code new technology which can detect whether text has been written by an AI, also fact check misinformation, And a greater concern in the academic environment is whether a student actually did the work. So on to deep fakes. Yes, we should be concerned. Of course, AIs which generate text can also generate deep fakes, which are synthetic videos and audio recordings which emulate and even impersonate a specific person. This is a potential minefield for the criminal justice system. If the video makes its way into an evidence bag and maybe someone is convicted based on false evidence. To prevent deep fakes from infecting the evidence system, data must be protected at source, and strong and continual cybersecurity threat mitigation is crucial. Cybersecurity policies must be run by humans using the most robust tools for the job. So AI is everywhere, it's omnipresent, embedded in a range of services and tools we may interact with on a daily basis. Google, Microsoft, Netflix, Facebook, Amazon are all pioneers of AI-based technologies which improve customer experience, analyse and make predictions from data, recommending your next movie or purchase, and also improve operational efficiency. So your order is on the road within 2 hours of clicking purchase from the comfort of your desk. Some may say that the use of AI has gone too far and ethical warning bells should have sounded sooner, but it may be in fact too late to look back. AI is with us and works alongside us every day. We must be informed and ensure we know when and where it's being used and make the best use of it in an ethical and legal way, which is not to the detriment of people. So onto AI and security. So security was a pioneer of AI. For a short time, technology in the industry was a step ahead of the consumer markets. Digitisation provided an opportunity to become an early pioneer in AI technology. The types of technology did not resemble human behaviour. It was designed to augment the effectiveness of security processes which require human intervention. In the last 10 years, the external factors such as the development of what we know as general purpose technologies have enabled the acceleration of innovation, and the use of AI in security has progressed from narrow, very specific detection technologies to search across a vast array of systems and data types. Security is leading again, and it could be argued with more ethical guardrails than big tech. So a foundational AI technology in security is object detection. But what actually is it? Images are very difficult to analyse and produce consistent results due to the wide range of operating environments. Images are known as unstructured data, which means there are no headings or fields, as you see in a spreadsheet, which allow certain criteria to be searched. The data is literally scattered all over the place in a random way, which is different in each image, and it used to be impossible to search unless the date, time, or other data markers known as metadata were added alongside the image data. But the quantum leap was the move to convolutional neural networks, which are designed to recognise objects in stages, such as the shape, size, colour, and so on. Here we see how a car may be recognised. But to get you started, the picture of the elephant provides an analogy. The neural network may be represented by the blindfolded people, each of which has to identify a different part of the elephant. By combining their knowledge, they figure out what it is. And this is, in essence, how a neural network works. Part of the images are analysed, and the network compares the results and certainty, reaching a conclusion which may include a possible range of objects, such as a van, and here we see the correct detection of a car. So after over 20 years of trying, we now see very credible and reliable AIs in use, which, working with minimal and poor quality data, they're actively enhancing the human's ability to detect anomalies. Previously, they just created more risks and more work. AI-based object detection technology is now a significant component of modern remote monitoring services, which rapidly detect the right things, that is people, where they are not meant to be, and send alerts directly to the police or to the frontline force to investigate on the ground, armed with useful contextual information about where, how many, and what the suspects might look like. This is an example of AI and humans working together. So a little bit more on search of unstructured data. A further step beyond alarm filtering is AI-based video search, which again, due to the advances in object detection, various criteria may be used to search for the presence of a particular person, let's say identified by the colour of their jacket, in this case, across multiple scenes in different locations. Without AI and the enabling technologies sitting behind this kind of search exercise across multiple systems was impossible in the past. Onto facial recognition software, which is one of the most contentious forms of AI. Again, this has been around for a while, but mostly used in tightly controlled environments where the position of the face, its angle and lighting conditions could be managed to enable the face mapping software to work. Facial recognition software may not have previously been classified as AI-based, otherwise it's seen in the biometrics category. However, without AI, facial recognition software could not have been used more widely. Thanks to object detection technology, which sits behind it, faces can be found in images, and the best quality image selected and presented to the face mapping software. The angle of the face is less important, since the AI is able to imagine the facial features as if the face were presented squarely to the camera. The AIs can detect whether a person is live or not to protect hacking by watching for movements in the face, the blinking, and so on. How facial recognition software can be used now augments the solving of crime, to the extent that a person of interest may be found in recorded video in a fraction of a second, as opposed to hundreds of hours of police time physically looking for videos to find the suspect. The live facial recognition use case is the most intrusive. However, when managed within the guardrails of trustworthiness, can be effective in facilitating the movement of people. Take a stadium scenario, for example. Live facial recognition software may be used effectively as the ticket of the person, allowing them fast access to the stadium, and manage the crowds effectively as a result. So another use case for AI in security is threat detection and predictive response. AI is not just useful when analysing video, it's very good at finding relationships between occurrences of things in data gathered from multiple data sources. By combining the AI techniques, which is made possible through access to data via APIs, which is the way we talk to databases, very effective predictions may be made with regard to a growing incident. But the opportunity to analyse multiple data sources raises a number of important questions regarding the privacy of individuals, which is rooted in whether identity can be confirmed or inferred from the data gathered about them and their activities. The security process has managed to navigate through the traps of GDPR. However, many activities are stepping into non-security, which leads users not just to consider privacy, but the level of anonymisation and pseudonymisation of data, which is partially anonymised, when it's combined with other data sources. So you're bringing data sources together. And the AI is very good at actually joining that data together, which could result in identification. These are examples of technologies used in isolation in very specific ways. None of these use cases presents a particularly difficult challenge when put into operation, except facial recognition software, which I've mentioned several times because I certainly see it as a Jekyll and Hyde character. It has a duality which requires special treatment dependent on the context of its use. The reason for using these technologies is to rapidly review masses of data and draw the human's attention to unusual activities. The AI, though, should never be left to make decisions on its own, which may adversely impact on a human's rights without trained people being in the loop of the final decision. So on to identifying and containing harms. How do you actually know if AI is getting out of hand? Well, actually, you don't, not unless there's an effective governance framework. There is no emergency stop button shown so obviously here. Expensive mistakes can occur, resulting in large fines, and there can be real human cost, impacts such as breaches to privacy law, and not to mention reputational damage. And here is our friend Hal again. If left to develop without controls, we may see automated decisions taking a grip of society. It appears that this has already happened through the unregulated AIs which drive social media platforms. So it could be argued that AI and big tech is already out of hand. What happens if a government's use gets out of hand, though? A chilling example arose in the Netherlands. The government commissioned the development of an AI, which learned how to automate racial profiling on an industrial scale. It magnified pre-existing bias in the childcare benefit system. The AI determined that mistakes on forms were made by dual nationals, which must mean fraud. And this resulted in incorrect fines being issued to totally innocent people. They wrecked families and countless lives, and the situation prevailed for over 5 years. There was a lack of governance, the algorithm was unexplainable, and worse, the department was incentivized to recover the cost of the development. The AI was built using biased data, managed within a biased system, with no independent audit or oversight. And pictured here is the cover of Amnesty International's report, Xenophobic Machines, on the issue, which makes very grim reading. As a consequence, the Dutch government, the governing body of an entire country, resigned to acknowledge the gravity of the impact they'd caused, and lessons may be learned from this very extreme example. And the remedial action became foundational to the pending EU AI Act. On to Clearview AI. This company developed a facial recognition database with a commercial mission to sell subscriptions. You could point a mobile device at any person and the app would identify them based on information taken from a social media profile. The same app was then used incorrectly by various police forces, which augmented bias. So they didn't have a human in the loop, they just believed what the computer said. It resulted in many false arrests. And that was just on the software decision. And this actually led to a ban in various regions in Canada and various states in the USA. They were also fined £7.5 million by the ICO, the Information Commission's Office in the UK, for breaches to GDPR. Maybe they should have anticipated the risk of taking freely accessible images and data of millions of people without permission. They should have determined whether they should have this data at all, also whether they should use it in this way. Clearview made very expensive mistakes, but they are learning. They now said they vet the customer, so they only put it in the hands of those who are authorised and trained to use it properly. They've also given their product to the Ukraine government to help find missing people, to protect against Russian infiltration, and sadly to identify bodies too. So the use of AI raises many new questions. The systems which now feed their data into AI-based analytics products were designed to fulfill specific needs based on the risks identified for the area in question, so very specific. The use of data in AI is designed for security may now step outside the security moat, as we describe it, into the realm of privacy, human rights, equality, and employment law, to name a few. Furthermore, technologies such as facial recognition are proven to be so accurate in certain circumstances, it may be edging towards negligence if they're not used by the police in the process of solving criminal cases. With the wealth of tools available, APIs which allow system databases to be joined securely and quickly, the barrier to adoption of AI is dropping. Different departments within organisations see security data as rich pickings to feed into more general operational processes, such as building efficiency monitoring. These applications constitute a change in the use of the data, and the organisation may not be authorised to use it legally without a deep dive into the origin and challenge the entire data journey as to whether they should have it and whether it's ethical to use it in this way. The stakes are high, and outside security use, there may be fines of misuse up to 4% of revenue for breaches to GDPR in the UK, 6% in the EU under the new EU AI Act, and the potential for great reputational damage as a result. So on to the ethical and legal considerations. There's actually no single source of truth from an ethical or legal perspective that can be applied universally across all regions. We advise organisations pre-development and implementation of AI, and we are asked these questions frequently. What can we or cannot do legally and ethically? And it's difficult to work that out. In the UK, the government has taken its time waiting for innovation to mature, and they published a national AI strategy, which led to an AI regulation policy paper. Changes to the Data Protection Act are in the making through the Data Protection and Digital Information Bill. may see some clarity there. It seems that one sector-related regulator, the Surveillance Camera Commissioner, will be absorbed into general data processing functions. Yet the UK government appears to prefer a sector-specific approach to AI oversight. We await the AI regulation white paper, which is due to be released sometime soon. We expect that the government will not create any new legislation, and based on the evidence heard at the Science and Technology Committee hearings examining the issue of AI regulation, Big Tech were keen on no regulation of AIs because they can be trusted to be ethical, in their words, and urged the government to just regulate how they are used. UK is considered to be aligned with the USA, maybe waiting a little bit. Also, the EU is totally different in its approach, taking a more prescriptive approach. But without regulation in the UK, the sector-specific standards and guidance are even more crucial than ever. I mentioned the EU legislation. It's very different to the UK. Some say it's the gold standard of risk-based AI legislation. It's described as both horizontal across sectors and vertical within single sectors. And the pyramid figure was produced by the European Commission, which conveniently explains prohibited AIs holding unacceptable risk. And you can see from the diagram, social scoring or harmful or manipulative AIs are banned. And high-risk AIs are permitted, but with restrictions. And those restrictions include pre-market assessment, conformity and post-market monitoring to make sure they're not getting out of hand. Live facial recognition is prohibited outright for monitoring public places unless certain criteria are met. So it sits somewhere between prohibited and high risk. Permitted AIs are chatbots with some transparency requirements, and deepfakes sat in this area. However, it appears that the EU is changing its position to move deepfakes into the high-risk category. So looking at how to assess the ethical questions which may be raised, a good set of tests is to apply principles, and we rely on the OECD guidelines, which set out a number of good practices in terms of managing the ethics of AI. And those principles include human agency and oversight. So that's a human in the loop to determine the final decision, also to ensure the entire operation of the system is governed and corrected if bias is discovered. Something missing from the Dutch government implementation. Technical robustness and safety, does it work? Are the decisions repeatable? Is it accurate? Is it free from bias? And other privacy and data governance policies in place for which the board of the organisation, senior decision body, is actually accountable? And does the board actually understand they're accountable? And so on. I won't go through all of them. Only if the ethical and legal principles are satisfied should a deployment of AI go ahead. And the challenge for the security industry is having to rely on legislative clauses, which are scattered across multiple statutes. It's complex and difficult. Therefore, guidance and standards which operationalise these requirements are really, really crucial to codify the ethics in a way that can be followed like a kind of checklist approach. So there are a few things to consider and questions which many organisations may not have thought of asking. But now there are signposts to good guidance, which may help the technology benefit a larger number of organisations safely. On to further guidance, I've included a reading list of relevant global sources of information on AI and also on facial recognition software. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi, Pauline. It's always great to catch up with you. And thank you for delivering another engaging presentation for Security by Live. So just to kick off, this is your second time presenting at our event, and you're also quite a regular contributor to our magazine. So what brought you here today and why this topic?
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for inviting me back, and it's a pleasure to be here. What brought me to this topic is the increasing concerns that I have around the security industry stepping outside what is described as a moat around it in terms of what's legal and certainly what's ethical. But the moat is essentially security use, okay, which tracks different clauses in GDPR. But increasingly we're seeing this technology being used in different ways. When does it step outside that? And also, what are the risks associated with combining data sources? So it's a warning bell that's ringing, and one that the industry, which is very good at technology and also putting technology that becomes very robust to put to good use, the industry might find itself in deep water very, very quickly if it doesn't address some of these issues.
And like you said, AI is such a growing trend in security at the moment and across so many other different verticals. Where do you think this is heading in the future?
So the greatest concern where it's heading is automation of everything and the human losing control, which is why I emphasise human in the loop of the final decision, certainly when it comes to security decisions and other decisions that involve the liberty of people. And liberty includes whether people feel free to express themselves and to move in public places, without feeling that they are being observed, even though it's by machine. What's happening to that data? So too much data collected, and that being totally out of control is the doomsday scenario, and we're heading that way, in my opinion.
We don't want to end up in a scenario like iRobot. I think that's everyone's first movie that you start to think about when AI is brought up in terms of being out of control. So it's definitely something that we need to put the right best practice and legislations in place. And speaking of, one of the biggest controversies in the public, which links to the facial recognition ethics that you spoke about, is that lack of privacy of our data in our everyday lives. Like you said, whether it's Amazon, Netflix, so on and so forth. But does this pose a conflict with GDPR, and how can we regulate this?
Yes, very, very good question. It is my belief that we were told we had to trade our privacy rights in order to benefit from services provided by various providers. We don't have to trade our privacy rights. And I think the test case, I use it as a test case, Clearview AI, although they had, they were trying to run a business that seemed like a good idea. And the GDPR, it's a very prescriptive, it's a very good solid piece of legislation. It covers everything, but it actually defines nothing. So it doesn't surprise me they got into trouble. GDPR does regulate this because fundamentally what was at the root of that particular issue is that the company wasn't allowed to just take data and change its use. So the people hadn't consented for it to be used that way, for their faces to be mapped in that way, and also what ended up being a kind of tracking mechanism in place as well. So there were traps all over the place, but I think the fact they walked into those traps, shows that this is not an area that can be navigated easily. GDPR is meant to do that.
Well, thank you. I'm conscious that unfortunately I think we've run out of time. But Pauline, your insight is always incredibly valuable, and thank you for your session today and for taking the time to speak with me. If anybody has any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Pauline directly on the platform, get in contact, and you can find out more about AI and security. Thank you.